Now here he is making the case for Doge, making the government more efficient. Better than I could, better than Trump can, and better than Elon can. He goes crazy. Watch.
It's easy to comfort oneself by thinking that these sky-high tax rates and growing government revenues are providing some crucial ingredients of progressive government. But they are often simply the toll of waste and mismanagement. The first phase of the Second Avenue subway's construction at $2.5 billion per mile was 8 to 12 times more expensive compared to a sampling of similar projects in places like Italy, Sweden, Paris, and Berlin, not exactly low-cost locales. A large chunk of state and city tax revenues goes to fund pensions. In Illinois, more than 8% of the budget goes towards pensions. In New York City, nearly 22% of the budget funds pensions and benefits for government workers. Now, promising government workers generous pensions has been an easy way to buy the support of a crucial voting bloc while ensuring that the costs don't show up in the budgets until years later. America's big cities are incubators of growth, vitality, and energy. That's why the spotlight is placed on them and their governance. And what people have seen recently is liberalism run amok. For years, theft was rampant in California's cities because of a weak shoplifting law. New York's homeless, some of whom are drug addicts or mentally ill, are left to frighten and harass the public on the streets and in the subways. The man charged this week with attempted murder after pushing another man in front of the subway had a string of prior arrests. The ultimate test, of course, is how people are voting with their feet. For years now, New York has been losing people to states like Florida. This same story can be told with minor variations about California and Texas. Basically, big red states are growing at the expense of big blue states, which will translate politically into more Republican representation in Congress and more electoral votes. There's now an interesting effort by people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to combine cultural conservatism and economic nationalism with the radical reform of government. That could be an appealing ideology for many voters who are frustrated by a government where nothing seems to work that well. On the other side, if Democrats do not learn some hard lessons from the poor governance in many blue cities and states, they will be left defending cultural elites, woke ideology, and bloated, inefficient government. And that might be a formula for permanent minority status.
Woo! I mean, that man absolutely cooked. Remember, that is a CNN host. Smash that like button if you enjoyed what he just said. What he said at the end was absolutely true, but first let me touch on what he was getting at when it comes to blue state inefficiency. California has spent over $200 billion and wasted 20 years trying to install high-speed rail. And anybody have a guess for how many miles of track have been laid so far? 0. That is people's hard-earned money going to lawyers and consultants and environmental regulators. So much regulation makes it impossible for things to actually get completed in California. To me, that qualifies as theft and money laundering, because you know the same people who are getting all of this money from California for these failed projects are the same ones who are voting and likely donating to Democrat politicians to keep this little scheme alive. But to what he said at the end, yes, if Democrats do not get this under control and they don't take a hard look in the mirror and see that they are the problem, everything they stand for is outright repulsive to Americans at this point, they will never govern again. It's not just a given that in 4 years or in 8 years, people are going to support the Democrats again. All these people who are Democrats who went to Donald Trump are going to have kids who are going to be more of this middle-leaning, slightly right-leaning conservative values, and it's just going to perpetuate a culture in America where far-left policies are just outright rejected by the culture. The craziest stat that I heard was 90% of counties in America moved to the right this election. So while the media is trying to say, oh, it wasn't a landslide because, he only won by a few million votes and they don't really have that big of a majority in the House and the Senate, they fail to look at the fine details. Kamala didn't flip a single county and Trump moved 90% of counties towards the right. 40% of Californians voted for Trump. Illinois, 45% of residents there voted for Trump. These are deep blue havens. If just one of those states happens to become a Republican state or even a swing state, the Democrats will forever lose elections, which is probably a good thing. I don't know why I'm trying to give them advice on what they should do to make things better, because we know that they're incapable of doing anything right.